What's going on, everybody? I thought I'd make another video tonight. Get a 2-for-1 special, I guess, for the day. So, um, healthcare is a topic that comes up a lot. And with things going on right now the way they are with the pandemic, I've seen some videos, I've heard some stories, and seen some cell phone video from people that are in facilities right now, and it isn't a good environment, when it comes to your health on a given day. So, when it comes to being in custody or in prison or jail in times of a pandemic or a worldwide, uh, you know, situation like we're in now, you have to expect that it's going to get worse. Now, there may be some states or agencies or wardens on a local level, or jail commissioners, superintendents, whatever they're called around the country, but they may be doing better, maybe trying more things to either show that they care or because they actually care and they don't want to have their facility overran with people that are sick, because that gets to the main heart of this issue, I think, which is cost. Because um, you know there's a lot of people that say there's a prison industrial complex in this country, and to an extent, as someone who's been a part of it, I agree with that. I mean, there is money in prisons, and there's a demonstrated history in the past of people making money off of prisons. Um, I watched a documentary, or a film anyway, on Netflix called The 13th, and it was about 13th Amendment, and talked a lot about a lot of things that have came since that was passed. Um, One of the things they mentioned in there was that several major stores, like JCPenney and Victoria's Secret specifically, had made money and used prison labor to make their products. When that came to light, they found other suppliers and other sources, and they made press releases that briefly explained why they did that. But it was kind of, I'd say, coincidental, but it wasn't really coincidental. But it was coincidental that they changed those contracts after that information was released. So they didn't want to be attached to that or made a part of that. Other companies use prison labor. It doesn't have to be manual or physical labor, but they use prison labor for other businesses, like customer service. When you call certain companies, you may think you're talking to a customer service rep, and you are, but they're inmate in North Carolina, for example. So cost is something that prisons have to deal with. Then you get into things like private prisons versus state-run or federally run or municipal-run jails or prisons, and that's when you can really see the differences in that. I've got a friend of mine, she used to work at a private prison. Talked to her about some of these kinds of things. And all the places that I've been at were all state or county or city-ran facilities. So I myself have never been in a private prison, but if you have, or if you know someone that has, and you've got some reputable information, please comment down below, and look forward to seeing those. Healthcare is something that a facility has to think about, and it's something that, in my experience, was always kind of a hot topic. Because when you talk about healthcare, you're talking about either mental, psychological services, psychiatric services. You're talking about medical, preventative, diagnostic services, small things like blood pressures and maintenance medications, that kind of stuff. That really isn't that big of a deal, I don't think. I know there's some people that I knew that had issues with medications. They were on certain medications. Now there's going to be an issue, and they're going to try to substitute certain drugs, and that's locally dependent on whatever their procedure is. But if you had a car accident and you're arrested some days later after the car accident, and you're given prescription for narcotics, you're not going to be able to have those narcotics while you're in jail. It's just not going to happen typically. Maybe some places that you go to, they might, but they're probably going to keep you separate from everyone else. They're going to be very strict about controlling that medication and how it's given, making sure that you don't cheek it or swallow it or try to sell it, or whatever you may do with it that isn't taking it as it's intended. So, healthcare is something, there's a lot of disparity, and prisoners on the whole have issues, and you can look through talk to people that you know, or people that you may have in your family that's been to prison or been to jail. You can certainly read through case law and see the allegations that some prisoners make. Some of it they have proof for, some of it they don't. But, when it comes down to it, prisoners, it's been my experience. You hear about a lot of people that'll come to jail, and because they're in an addiction type lifestyle, they'll come to jail and they'll bulk up and they'll gain weight, and a lot of things with them will stabilize and kind of improve. Me personally, I was arrested when I was 25, just turned 26, and I had a very fast metabolism, very high metabolism. So I was eating, a lot of different things. A lot of it, honestly, my diet wasn't the greatest. A lot of fast food. But my previous career when I was an EMT, that doesn't really lend itself to having the best diet. So I kind of continued that after I wasn't able to do that anymore, and still to an extent have a diet of like a 12-year-old. A lot of chicken nuggets, a lot of stuff that kids eat. I don't eat a lot of red meat. There's other things that I do, but at that time, metabolism is very fast. When you go to jail or prison, your food is dictated by the state, and it's decided what you're going to eat. The bulk of it, anyway. You may augment that or supplement that with things you may buy, but your diet has an effect. And people that go to jail for the first time, at certain ages with certain health conditions, they can have different effects from that food or from that departure from what they're used to. But healthcare is something that typically prisons and jails don't provide themselves. They will typically subcontract that work out and to another company, a third-party vendor or a company. It's how it's typically set up. And what I've seen in Kentucky, at one point they used a company called CCS. Now it's called Corazon or Corizon Correctional Healthcare. And had different experiences. I had some of the nurses, and I didn't really have an occasion to see medical very often. In Kentucky, you're required to get a TB shot. That's the only required thing that you have to do. And if you don't do that, then they'll do it for you, basically, because it kind of has some roots in logic, I guess. If you have someone that has TB, refuses to get a TB test, and they're spreading TB, you can see how that would be a problem. So that's the one thing that you have to go to medical for every year, is to get that TB shot. Aside from that, my main issue that I saw medical for was for psychiatric, psychological services, for counseling, and also I tried some medications to kind of deal with the anxiety that I had and the stress that I had, the depression that I had, the intrusive memories and nightmares that I had, flashbacks that I had. So, when you see those people every day, medical staff, and you have to interact with them, it becomes pretty clear how a lot of them feel. And it's not a generalization. I certainly don't want to generalize anyone, because I wouldn't want to be generalized. But it was my experience pretty much that they, as a whole, their attitude was they really didn't care. They were there. It was a job. And a lot of them, honestly, are women. And a lot of those women, they feel some sense of power over another human being, because while they're not prison staff, while they're not guards, they are employees of the state, and they are a woman in a correctional environment. And so, on the street, they may be a 1 or a 2. In there, they're a 9 or a 10. And while you're not there as the prisoner or as the medical staff person, you're not there to date anybody. I mean, people are people. That kind of stuff did happen. Not with me, and I never got involved with anyone while I was in prison, inmate or staff, but I knew some people that did, and it usually ends bad. So go to medical, get your shot, leave, don't come back, pretty much. I don't have an occasion to go to medical very often for anything, because related to the reason that I was there in the first place, why I was there in prison in the first place. I have a very poor opinion of the medical establishment as a whole, of doctors, insurance companies. So that kind of fed to that, and I still don't think much of doctors and hospitals and insurance companies today. But, there are procedures and protocols in place. But as an example, there was an individual that was in custody. He was serving, I think, a 9-year sentence, a state sentence, and he was at penitentiary, the only penitentiary in the state, at Eddyville. He was an older guy, and he was having some psychological issues, some depression, some withdrawal, and that kind of stuff, and he decided to go on a hunger strike. And he stopped eating food and stopped drinking fluids. There was a medical doctor that was over the facility. There was also a psychiatrist that was over the facility. And I think she ended up losing her license or surrendering her license to practice, and the doctor as well. This individual was there. He had a 9-year sentence. He was 3 or 4 years into it. It was almost done. And he did that, and he ended up dying because of that. Now, can you really fault them for what happened? To an extent, yeah, because when you're a prisoner, your safety and your care and your well-being is in the hands of the state. So they're responsible for you. They are your guardians, literally, and they have a duty to maintain your health and your safety, even if you're not doing it yourself. So in that case, I think they did screw up. There may have been a lawsuit. I'm not sure about criminal charges related to that. I don't think the guy had very much family, and that was I think the main reason why not a lot of attention got to it. There were some articles that I saw in some different papers, and I was in custody when it happened, and that psychiatrist was the same one that I saw at another facility that I was at, years before that, a couple years before that happened. After that, the Department of Corrections implemented a policy that said, hey, we have to do this with hunger strikes. If someone says they're on a hunger strike, or if they go more than X amount of days without a meal, then they're officially on a hunger strike, and we're going to do some things to make sure this doesn't happen. So they did implement policies after the fact, but that individual's still dead. When I was at minimum security at Blackburn, an individual that was walking down by the maintenance area and hit his, he fell basically on some ice and laid there for a while, and he died. I think what we were told is that he had a heart attack, and he was an older guy. He had some heart issues. Wasn't really expected. For healthcare, you have to look at the population that's coming to the facility, and also the ability and level of care of the facility to give, and that a lot of times is your issue. If you do drugs for 20 or 30 years, it's going to have effects on your mind, your body, your heart, your brain, those kinds of things. And then, just because you're in jail or prison and you're sober technically, a lot of addiction professionals don't really count that as sober time. So the biggest thing, and I've seen it time and time again, people that I knew, people that I was in jail with, people that got out after I got out or before I got out, they get out of prison or out of jail and they relapse. The problem with that is that when they relapse on whatever it may be, alcohol or heroin or whatever the drug of choice they may have had, is that they think they can go back to the amount that they used to do, and they've had a period of sobriety where the drug's not been in their system, and the amount they go back to, or that specific amount of drug that they're deciding to take, has been altered. It's got fentanyl in it, or it's got something else in it used to cut it, whatever the chemistry may break down to be. And they try to take the same amount, and that amount unfortunately kills them. So people that are released from prison are at a higher risk for overdosing, and it's been proven over and over again. In my experience and things that I've read, and also people I've interacted with since I've been released. But that is a big black hole I think I'd like to see fixed. And, I guess until enough people care about it to actually do something more about it, then it's not really going to change. But that is something that I can say for certain that I've seen. It isn't really fair. It isn't good, but it kind of goes both ways. You have the fault of the people that are doing it, and the fault of the people that aren't really helping to kind of, once that's something that's known, aren't really helping to kind of mitigate that when those people are released. So it goes both ways, I think. A lot of times prisons are set usually in out of the way type cities or areas, and they may or may not have the best healthcare. I know in Kentucky you have the state reformatory in LaGrange has their own ambulance that they can actually operate from. Now, I don't know practically if it's easier or faster to call the local, which in that case would be Oldham County, to call the local ambulance or the local EMS service, or if it'd be easier for them to use their own. That's the only one that I know of in the state. Other than that, other prisons or jails you go to, they're going to call the local municipal agency, whether it's the Central City Fire Department or Muhlenberg County EMS or whatever it may be, whatever county you're in. And then from there, we've seen it a few times. We have people that had heart attacks and were taken out, and it takes, an ambulance can't just come in the front gate and leave with someone. They have to go through a sally port. They have to go through checks of the ambulance to make sure it isn't an escape, which I guess has happened. It's probably the reason why. So if you have a heart attack or you're injured seriously in prison, you're not going to go right to the front of the line. You're not even going to get to the line in time, probably. So, and that's just the security protocol the prison has. But then when it actually comes to going to the hospital, you're probably going to be chained up. You're probably going to have an armed guard with you. Protocol typically states that. And you're going to be watched and supervised and monitored, and you can forget about privacy at that point. If you have a wound or an injury to a certain area or a medical issue from a certain area, you can expect to have someone watching you pretty much the whole time, which is understandable. But I've seen nurses, and especially nurses, I've seen doctors that I had one doctor I encountered, and after I met with her for 5 minutes, I walked out. I was so mad, and I wrote a note to basically the director of the medical department at the time, and I said I never want to see that woman ever again. She was so cold and mean, and for just no reason. That's the problem you dealt with. And the way that I felt about it is she was that way because she felt like I was a prisoner and I was a lower human being. And that's the reason I think why she felt she could act the way that she acted. Or maybe she's just that way to everybody that she encounters. But I picked up on it. I didn't like it. And I never saw her ever again. So you have people in prison that are involved in the delivery of healthcare that are good, and some that are really good and really care, and they do. And you have some that just could give two shits about you less. They don't care whether you live or die. And so that's what people don't understand out here in society, is that when you go to jail or prison, you lose a lot of your rights, and that's just part of it. But I don't think that you should lose the right to live. I don't think you should lose the right to have, if you get into a fight with someone for any reason or no reason at all, that shouldn't mean that you have a death sentence. And you get stabbed, or you get, assaulted, or have, hot oil poured on you, or whatever kind of creative things, or a lock in a sock, or whatever kind of things may happen. That shouldn't mean that you have a death sentence. Some places it means that, and that's unfortunate. But overall, typically prison healthcare is subcontracted out, and you get all the things that are fraught with that, and it isn't always a good thing. If you have any comments or experiences, or you have any loved ones that have any experiences with any of these things I've talked about medicine or healthcare in prison or jail, leave your comments below, and try to answer them as I see them. Thank you.